Mrs. Bush was the vote judge, and they were jumping up, and they didn't tell me the score because they were just fist bumping and jumping, and then everyone was clapping and screaming on the bank, and Kyle is like going crazy. I'm like, but what's the score? And then when I saw 202 on the board, I was like, holy crap! Like, not just to go 200, but to go the exact same distance, even in meters, for which the first male did in 1987 like that was 61.5 was what Glenn Thurlow did at Moomba Masters when he was the first man to go over 200. He went 202, 61.5, and that's exactly what I did, and that's just creepy.
Hello and welcome back or welcome to the Waterski Podcast. This is Matteo Luzzeri, your host, and the goal of this podcast is always the same, to promote the great sport of water skiing through the voices of the people in the sport. Now, if you've been following this podcast for a while, you might have noticed a little trend of how these interviews go. So there's the first part of the interview generally has the history of the guest in the sport, no matter what the role is, skier, judge, coach, amateur, pro. Generally, that's how we start these interviews. And then we follow up with something else. Could be current events, could be opinions, could be expertise that this person has in the sport or outside of the sport. And with Jacinta, in this second part, there's a good combination of current events and history, her history in the sport, and history of the sport, because we spend a good amount of time talking about her breaking the 200-foot barrier, something that she had been wanting to do for a very long time, and she was the first one doing it. And through this part, we talk about the circumstances that brought to that record and the events that happened after she broke the record. Now, if you haven't listened to part one, I would highly suggest to go back and listen to that first part of the interview first, because I think you will get the context of the person and the drive of Jacinta into searching and seeking this record. So before we jump into this second part, I just want to thank all the listeners of the podcast who always give me very good feedback, very encouraging feedback. And also I would like to thank my friends who I've had a chance to see a little bit more now that I'm in Florida, and they've given me some good pats on the back about this project. So thank you all for listening, and without any further ado, here's the second part with Jacinta Carroll. Let's talk a little bit about like the level. I mean, obviously, not only have you been dominant, but you've been how can I say? People now think of women's jumping different. Like you think of an event and you go, okay, that's kind of like where the limit is, or where as far as people will go, as many buoys as people will run. And for the last, I don't know how many years, you have been breaking those barriers on and on and on, until there was this one that just sticks because the number looked different, like 60 meters or 200 feet, So you had those chasing. And I'm curious to hear, when did that thought come to mind of, I might be able to go 60, or I might be able to go 200? When did that started to be in the works?
It would have to be November 28, 2011. And I know that's very specific, but I have a poster on my childhood bedroom roof. So I lived in the attic of the house, so the roof was only about a meter away. Mm-hmm. And it's a hand-drawn poster that says, it's white and it's got black writing, and it says, "Will you be the first female to jump 200 foot? Question mark." And then the next poster said, "Did you do enough today to win gold?" And then the next one, I think, says something like, "There's no barriers, keep dreaming." And when I jumped 200 this year, or last year in 2021, my mom ran upstairs in my childhood bedroom and took a photo of it and sent it to me. So that poster's been there since the day I last held Ray's hand. He was probably down to nearly sub 40 kilos. You could see the tumours through him. He had a tube through his mouth that he would, drink some soft drink just to get some sugar. It would go through basically his esophagus down and straight onto a bag on the floor because he had no intestines left. His intestines had like 14 tumours, right? And he was bones. He had nothing to him. You had to roll him so he wouldn't get sores on him,
Yep.
bed sores. And he didn't speak. I was there for 2.5 hours as my last day with him, and he didn't speak. He had no energy, he had nothing. And then as soon as I kissed him on his head, said goodbye, and I went to leave, he just gripped my hand and wouldn't let it go. So I sat back down and he basically told me to never change who I was, to never listen to anybody else, do not change who I was, and to make sure I break that barrier of going 200 foot because he knew I could do it. So I went home, obviously bawled my eyes out for about hours.
Right.
And I wrote that poster and I stuck it on my wall and it's been there ever since and it's still there. So yeah, that was kind of the turning point of, all right, well, shit, I think my best at the moment is 178, 177. That's a long way to go. But then you just work away at it, little chips. So my first goal was join the 180 club. There's only 5 ladies in it. Not even that. I think it was 4 at the time. Like, join the 180 club. All right. Oh, well, now I'm injured and I'm watching Natty go 190. She went 190 at Hancock. She went 190 at Jack's. She's going 190 everywhere. So 190's got to be possible. All right. Well, let's go 190. And then when you're going 190, what's another 10 feet?
Right.
Like, I went 194 and then, 198, 198, 198, 198. So obviously I did get stuck from 2016 onwards. I went 198, I think 4 or 5 times. And I remember Jarrett and Britta Llewellyn always making a joke about it whenever we were at LCQ because me and Dorian were stuck. Like, Dorian would go 99 and I'd go 98, and then Dorian would go 98 and I'd go 98, and we just couldn't go over 200. And then I think, yeah, he finally broke the barrier and his first time over was like 203, 204, and then boom, like, he's there. He's over that number and then he's taking off.
Right.
So I felt like for the last 4 years, like ever since 2016, I knew I could do it. I just never had the opportunity. Like, to be honest, Mateo, like, as a jumper, and it's the same in slalom, right? You need the perfect boat. You need the perfect boat driver. You need the perfect wind. You need the perfect jump ramp. And then you need to be perfect. So 5 stars and getting them to align is so difficult. And
Yep.
because I was full-time working and I was so busy outside of the sport, I probably look back and regret not giving myself the opportunity to go for it more. Because I would just rock up at LCQ every year. I knew the boat would be good. I knew the lake would be good, and I knew that I could perform. But then, I was unfortunately faced with and I hate to say it, and I'm going to be brutally honest, I was always faced with the fact that I was a female, so you're never getting the number one driver. You're never getting the number one conditions. You're never getting those opportunities. Like, I jumped in rain one year and went 198, equaled the world record in pouring down rain. Like, and then it was, okay, you've got this boat driver today because, of course, Les is driving the men's.
Yep.
Or, Scott Ellis, oh, he's only a learner driver. Really? He's one of the best drivers in the world. Oh no, so he's for juniors and then he's getting out for open. Like, it was always this battle of, do you not want 200? Like, I'm trying and you can see me basically do it in practice. Just give me the opportunity. And I think, like, I honestly felt like I had 4 out of the 5 stars or 3 out of the 5 stars for probably 4 years straight. Until Fluid this year where I had 5 out of 5. And I knew, like, leaving Australia, I'd worked so hard with Curtis and I trained so hard in the gym. and I was sacrificing a lot, right? I was leaving work for 6 to 8 weeks, and in my industry, like that's massive. But my bosses were fully supportive. I knew I had to come home and do 2 weeks quarantine. Like I was risking a lot to go for it, but I technically knew if I just got four even out of those 5 stars, I could do it.
Hmm.
Um, so I just happened to have not done it for the 5 events that I went to out of the 6 events I did in America
Right.
before the last weekend I was there in October.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, huge, huge jump. Um, but I'm just curious, and I'm sorry to go back to the 2011, but
Go back.
were were there conversations with Ray about this? Like, did you guys? No, it was just that moment.
It was just that moment. Like, obviously, he was like, all right, this year you should do these events. Listen to these people, don't listen to these people type thing. Remember, the keys at what he told me and coached me before. Don't let a coach stray you away from those. They might stray you away from others, but these are the ones you have to stick to type thing. There was definitely those conversations. There was conversations about, you know, I've coached June to break these records, and now you're going to break her records. Like, that's what you should be doing. That's what you should be looking towards. But there wasn't a mention of 200 at all until
Uh,
that last moment. And I thought, I know he's high on drugs, right?
yeah.
Like, he's getting absolute everything pumped into him to keep him alive right now. Like, is he crazy?
Right.
Like, only him would have that crazy thought that you could go 23 feet further.
Right.
Like, so, massive weight on my shoulders, massive pressure. And I carried that weight quite heavy at some points in time. Like, I definitely wanted to retire and quit a few times. But I don't think I ever could have lived with the guilt of not, of retiring and quitting whilst it was still on my head and shoulders. So yeah, there was no discussion prior. It was literally in that moment, and it took me a while to obviously process because I was so upset having to say goodbye to him and hearing him speak for the last time and seeing his face for the last time and looking at him as I'm closing the hospital door. Like,
Yep.
those moments take over. But when the dust settled, I was like, wow, okay, I got a lot of work to do.
Right. Well, and you did, and you did. So this might sound as a, and you managed it. You jumped over 200. Um, Before I ask you my next question, I'm just curious. Walk me through the day. You woke up in the morning. You're going to fluid. I'm sure you checked the weather app for headwind. Like, what was the vibe?
So the whole 5 weeks I was at Fluid, it was headwind in the opposite direction. So it was the normal jump direction. I think it's east, maybe. And then the week of the event, it had swung. So myself, Jack Critchley, and Kyle had to swing the ramp. And I've never really liked jumping that way.
Okay.
Growing up skiing at Fluid quite a bit from probably 2013 onwards, I jumped that way quite a bit. I just never could really get it together. So I was a bit skeptical because the last set I had going east, I jumped massive. Like, hands down, I did 200 in practice, but we didn't measure it. So it was on video, we'd recorded it, but we weren't going to go back and splash eye measure it until the weekend was done, right? We knew I'd probably done it in practice, but we wanted to, see if I could then do it in tournament. So we spun the ramp, and it was so windy. Like, at Fluid, it's so calm down the slalom lake, and then when it opens out into that bit of a swamp, that's right where you're turning and jump. So you go from really, really shallow water, gliding, perfect, no wind, and then all of a sudden, just when you're initiating your turn, you've got white caps, you've got crosswind chop, and you're trying to make this turn in deeper water, so you've suddenly lost all your speed, and then
Yeah.
go to the ramp. And the perception heading that direction into the ramp is just so different. Um, but like, obviously Freddie Krueger had brought out the Mastercraft boats for the week, and I trailed the 6 litre and the 6.2, and we played around with stuff, and like the boats felt great. And then Chris Ella, amazing jump driver. I always loved jumping behind him at Malibu Open and always jumped big behind him. So I was, and the drive is such a big thing. Like, no, like, yes, whether they're good or bad or okay, more so if you have confidence, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
had 100% confidence in Chris Ella. So like, those things were starting to fall into place, but the wind was just not playing ball. So on the Thursday, the women's had the prelims, and I love it. tornado warning. Literally a tornado warning for Park City. So we get a phone call from the chief judge, and she's like, Nikki Lee, and she's like, listen, Jacinta, we're going to bring the women's jump event forward. I was like, oh, why is that? And I'm like, and they're like, oh, because there's a tornado warning. I'm like, awesome. And when are men jumping? Oh, men are jumping tomorrow. Oh, okay, great. So, right, we've got women's in a tornado warning and men's tomorrow. Awesome. So we
Right.
go out there and jump first round, and listen, like jump pretty good. Like jumped I think 94 or 195, and I came in, I had confidence. I was like, I slipped out. Like I didn't get my full lift. I wasn't on the corner. Like I hit middle. Like damn, like the boat's feeling great. Chris is feeling great. Conditions aren't great at all, but they're doable.
So, so there's a few stars out of the five.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
we're getting there. So then the next day, honestly, like I thought it was a potential if I jumped well. I was like, if I really stay down through the weights and get, that delay out of the turn, I can do this. And I went out, and the second jump I went 197, and I did not get my full lift. I was like, we're on here. I'm like pumping myself up. I'm yelling at myself. And, we're heading down the lake, and I turned the corner and I had blinkers on. Like, I was so focused on that third jump. I'm like, it's your last jump in America. You are going 200. You can do this type thing. And then I'm gliding, and the boat stops.
No.
Stops.
What?
And I was like, what? And I look at the boat, and Chris Ella's doing this, hand across the neck, like, we're stopping. And I get in the boat, and they take me to the dock, and Nikki comes down, and she's like, Jacinta, we're stopping. The judges think it's too windy. It's too windy. You will hurt yourself. We are stopping. And I was like, but I've got one jump to go and I'm going 200. And they're like, no, it's too windy. So the men all got in the boat and cruised out and sat where the turn is in the white caps there and went to the ramp, and they all decided that it was too windy, that they were going to delay men's jump. So then they come back to the dock and they're like, men's jump is not happening. It's too windy. And I look at Nikki and I'm like, I want my third jump. She's like, Jacinta, it's too windy. I was like, I don't care. Isn't it my choice? Like I want to jump. She goes, okay, well, it's, do you want a warm up jump? Do you not want to, like, it's been 10 minutes. And I said, well, it's been 10 minutes. I'll have a warm up cut and pass. And then I'll decide if it's too windy. And I cut and
Oh,
pass.
that's a good politics, I would say, on your part.
Yeah, I was like, I'll cut and pass. If it's too windy, I'll come in. If it's not, So I cut and pass, and I look at Kyle, and he's just like, come on, like, we've got this, like, you can do it type thing. I'm like, right, well, that cut and pass felt absolutely awful. It's so choppy out there. It's very choppy into the pace, but, YOLO, we'll go for it. It's my last chance. And I didn't do it. I think I went 95 or 94, and I slipped out. Once again, I felt the cut was there, but I just didn't get my legs. It was so choppy into the base. I just couldn't get my legs. And that was it for what I thought was it. And I went into the ski locker at Fluid and cried once again. God, that sounds like a pretty typical story for me. And Kyle came in, and you could see him like tearing up as well. And he's like, oh God, Rabbit, I'm so sorry. Like, that was it. We had it. Like, we had it. It was in our fingertips. Like, that was it. And I was like, I know, like, I've wasted the opportunity. Like, everything was there. If only I had the wind I had last weekend, if only the wind was 5 mile an hour less or 2 mile an hour less. Anyway, so then men's slalom started, and I sat down, and I remember I was eating a burrito, and Kyle goes, why don't we ask for a third round? I was like, what? And he goes, the event is sanctioned for 3 rounds, right? It's sanctioned for 3 rounds. And we didn't do an LCQ because of the wind. So it's world class for 3 rounds. Why don't you ask for your third round after the men later on, because they reckon the wind's dropping? And I was like, do you reckon they'll let me do that? So I went and had a chat to a few people. I had a chat to Scott Ellis and a couple of others, and I was like, like, and this is like, some people are going to listen to this and probably not like it, but obviously I was a Nortex sponsored athlete,
Yeah.
okay? And this was a Mastercraft Pro event.
Oh, so sorry. this was the Mastercraft Pro ski
Yeah.
fluid. Okay,
Yes.
okay, that explains a lot because I remember watching you, but I also remember watching the slalom, and clearly you described it very well. So for the guys and the women on the way back, there was this humongous chop, and you
Yeah.
were jumping that way
Into it.
into it.
Into that
Ooh,
chop. So
oh
if you
my
go back and
God,
watch any of the slalom gate pullouts, they're out of
crazy,
control. And it's
crazy.
six ball, and six ball sits 20 meters before the ramp, right? Or 15 meters before the ramp. So it was choppy.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'd
yeah, it
gone
was.
197 in that and been like, are you
What?
for real, wind? Like, what karma? Come on. So I had a chat to a few people and I was like, this is gonna stir some crap here. Like, I'm Nautique sponsored and I 100% respect them and thank them for all of the support they've done. But this is my one opportunity. Like, this is it. I don't care about the money incentive. I don't care. I
Yeah.
just want to go 200. So I went up to Arn at Mastercraft and I said to him, Arn, your event's sanctioned for 3 rounds. I've only done two. You just witnessed me nearly tie a world record. I jumped 60 meters, which is still massive for a female, right? And I was 10 centimeters off the world record in white caps. If there's time for the day, can I please ask that open women and open men get the opportunity to have a third round? And he's like, well, if we're sanctioned for three, why the hell not? And he goes, as long as the judges want to hang around for it, I'm 100% behind the event still running. And I was like, oh my God, someone's in my corner. And it was like, one of those first events. I'd been to so many trying to go 200, but I always felt there was like a bit of negativity, whether it was the drivers or whether it was girls having to be in rough conditions or whether it was, certain things like that. I always felt like there was a bit of negativity about nobody wanting 200 to happen. And Anne was like, hell yeah, go for it. And I was like, oh my God, people are in my corner. Kyle's in my corner. Other people are saying, just go for it, take that third round. So I went upstairs and I spoke to Nikki and I explained it to her that we're sanctioned for 3 rounds. And she goes, well, it's been a long weekend, Jacinta. I'm 100% wanting you to go for it, but I'll have to obviously ask the other judges to see if they're willing to stay around and
Because she was
continue the
chief.
measure.
She was
She was
chief,
chief.
right? Right.
So there was the likes of Jerry Jackson and Dana Garcia and these judges, and she sat them down and asked them, and they were all like, "Yeah, let's keep it rolling. Whoever it has to be open for all. Everybody
Yeah.
has to have the opportunity. It can't just be you." So we called in all the female jumpers and asked if they wanted a third round. We called in the open men. So Tobias Georges took up the offer and myself. And then I remember getting ready and Vince started packing up the water ski broadcast equipment. And I ran to his trailer. I was like, Vinny, what are you doing? And he's like, we're done, Jacinta. I was like, no, 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 two jumpers to go. And he's like, what? I was like, two jumpers. He's like, no, we're done. It's been a massive day. I was like, Vinny, you leave this equipment on because I am going 200 foot. He said, what? I was like, I'm going to do it and you're going to film it. And he was like, you bloody better. So he sent his camera crew. He was not happy about it. Sent his camera crews back out. Tobias went out and jumped. And you know what, Matteo, like, I was confident. I sat on the job. I wasn't nervous. I was like, everyone is backing me. Everyone had driven, like a lot of people had driven around to the jump to watch. Like the judges wanted me to do it. Chris Ella had a 9 hour drive home and he could have left at 2 p.m. and it was about 5 p.m. now and he stayed. He stayed to drive and he hadn't even had a beer because he was like, nah, like I can't have a beer. I want to drive for Jacinta if they give her a third round. Like he was in my corner. The judges were there. Kyle was in my corner. Like I just finally felt that everyone wanted to see it and everyone was behind me. And I left the dock with confidence. And I think on my first jump, I once again didn't quite get my legs and went 97 or 98. And I was like, I turned the corner and I was going down and it was still choppy and it was still windy. And I just said to myself, you can't keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Like that's the definition of insanity.
Hmm.
Do something different. And I did. And I did the turn that I can do when I open cut every day of the week, but I can't do to the ramp. We did that turn that me and Curtis Shears and Kylie had worked on so long, and I did it. And all I did was hold on for the ride. Like once I got that delay and I let my skis finish and I waited, and then I got that slingshot, like hitting the ramp, I knew it was it. And I got my lift and I landed and I looked around and I was like, oh my God, that was massive. But, I thought the same thing 3 weeks earlier at Worlds and was 195. So I didn't want to get excited. I was like, it felt like it was it, but I didn't want to get excited. And then when we turned the corner, the boat judge and Chris, Mrs. Bush was the boat judge, and
Yeah.
they were jumping up, and they didn't tell me the score because they were just fist bumping and jumping, and then everyone was clapping and screaming on the bank, and Kyle is like going crazy. I'm like, but what's the score? And then when I saw 202 on the board, I was like, holy crap! Like,
202.
not just to go 200, but to go the exact same distance, even in meters, for which the first male did in 1987 is like
Ah.
that was 61.5 was what Glenn Thurlow did at Moomba Masters when he was the first man to go over 200. He went 202, 61.5, and that's exactly what I did, and that's just creepy.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So you didn't get the two finger sign from the boat judge because they were just
No,
losing their
no, I
mind. You
got
saw
two
it.
fists.
That's awesome. So you saw it on the board. You saw it
I
on the
saw it on
board.
the board, which was down near the start dock, and then I wanted to go back and share that moment with like my second family being the Eads. So I skied back to the dock that was near the jump and shared that moment with Kyle and Karen and their boys, Jaden and Damien. And I think I knocked over Jack Critchley's beer, and he had a crack at me. And yeah, yeah, it
That's
was quite
cool.
interesting. I'm just my dog is going crazy outside, so I'm sorry if you can hear
No,
that.
no problem. No problem. Look, and now comes the question I wanted to ask you before I asked about the 200,
Yeah,
which is a strange question, but you have passed the records. You know both in terms of wins, in terms of dominance, the 200 barrier and the 60 meters before that. What's next?
of course, it's the same question that everybody asks. Yeah, so I remember Marcus Brown asked me the same question after Open Worlds. He's like, 5 in a row, you've done it all, you done? And I was like, I gotta go 200. But I said to him, if I don't go 200 on this trip, I don't know how much more I have to give. Because I was so burnt out leaving Australia to get to America. Like I was working 50, 55 hours a week trying to afford to even come because it was going to cost me so much
Yeah.
due to COVID and quarantine and so forth. And then, like, for example, on a Wednesday, I'd get up at 4:30. I'd be at my work at 5. I'd gym from 5 till 6:30. I would work from 7 till 10:30. I would then drive an hour and a half to have two sets within 40 minutes with Curtis to ski, pack up my boat, drive back an hour and a half to work, get to work at 2, finish work at 7:30, get home at 8 o'clock. That was my day trying to train for Worlds. So, like, I was spent. On that trip, like, I was spent. So I wasn't sure whether going, not if I didn't go 200, whether I could do this again. Physically and mentally, whether I could do it again.
Hmm.
And then obviously I went 200, which was amazing. And
Yeah.
then the next 2 weeks in hotel quarantine, like a lot of people were, media from Australia and so forth were interviewing me and people asking me, like, are you going to announce your retirement? Are you done? What's your next goal? And I was like, I ain't done. That was so much fun. Like, can you imagine flying through the air for 4 seconds, like going 200? Like, that's amazing. I want to go bigger. I want to. So obviously, when you're in that high, in that moment, you want to keep going, and then you get back to the grind, and then you get back to the grind of I have no boat drivers this week, so it means I just can't train.
Yeah.
Great, means 2 weeks between training. Okay, and then Brisbane floods, and then you can't train again, and then this, and getting up at 4:30, getting home at 8 p.m. So you're back to the grind, and you're like, oh my god, how much longer can I keep doing this? So I had zero goals and expectations going into Moomba this year. I just wanted to have fun without No offense, without Ray on my shoulders, without that weight on my shoulders of having to go 200. And Moomba was so fun. I
Yeah.
had so much fun jumping. I know I didn't like the competition was a little bit down this year because of COVID, but I had so much fun and I jumped amazing because I was relaxed, you know, and I got to jump in the men's night jump. And then I come back to the grind again and everyone's like, well, US Masters, are you going to go? And to be honest, Matteo, I have 24 hours left to decide.
Oh, from
24
from now.
hours because I get automatic qualification for being world champion
Mm-hmm.
and I have 24 hours left to decide. And I'll be honest with you because this podcast is going to come out after
Yeah.
my decision. It's a 90% no for
Mm-hmm.
me at the moment. And there's a lot of factors that come into that. Um, One, the difficulty in training. So my soon-to-be father-in-law drives for me, and they're really, really busy with work. And it would be selfish of me to ask him to leave work to come and train me.
Fair.
My partner himself, he's super busy at work, so same thing. I would only be able to ski maybe on the weekends, you know, maybe at best. Um, but then every weekend for the last 6 weeks, I've had interstate travel with my work. So since Moomba, I haven't even been home on the weekends because I've been interstate travel for my work. So combination of factors of not being able to train.
And sorry, we
The
haven't even
fact,
said what do you do for a living?
I'm a physiotherapist and I do extra contract work for a professional sports team. So they're in season. So
Yeah.
every Sunday I leave at 5 a.m. I get the 6 a.m. flight out to Sydney or Melbourne and I'm physio on game day for them. So, yeah, so there's that factors. And then there's the factors of me actually not getting to do the things that I want to do and I haven't got to do for 11 years. Like go away on a weekend trip for my best friend's 30th that I've sacrificed every year for 10 years and go to these events and do these things. And then there's I hate to say it, once again, it's going to come out after my entry decision has decided. I was terminated from my contract after doing the world record behind Mastercraft,
Mm-hmm.
which hurt deep, really cut deep. Um, and I don't want to see those people. I don't want to go and put on a show, right? That's what we are as skiers, and that's where I think a lot of athletes get it wrong. We are a show. And the better we perform and we put on a show for the crowd and sponsors, the better money we get coming in. So it's not about backyard tournaments and running 41. It's not about backyard tournaments and going 200. It's about the rough weather. It's about doing it in cities. It's about doing these events where we can showcase our sport for a greater population.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'd be slapping myself in the face by going and putting on an amazing show after what I felt was getting really disrespected.
Yeah.
Really, really disrespected. Like, I understand that I did a world record behind another boat company, and I understand it's a business decision. Um, but, you know, I never actually broke contract.
And
I never did anything wrong. I just don't get paid, which is fine. I'm fine with that. And I only ever uploaded at that stage. I only ever uploaded the photo, which had Nautique plastered all over it. So I felt like they could still get some publicity, some positive publicity out of it. But I had tried so hard behind Nautique, and it was either coming back to Australia and never having that opportunity again, or risking it for the biscuit and doing it behind that opportunity in that last weekend. You know, I went 195 at Worlds. I went, you know, I went to every Nautique event. I left Malibu Open at 7 p.m. after prize giving and drove back 8 hours in the middle of the night, got to Kyle's house at 2 a.m., rocked up at Jack's the next day to jump behind Nautique, to try and do it at that event. Like I tried and tried, and I just couldn't get the 5 stars to align. And at the end of the day, in 50 years' time, I'm going to look back and I'm not going to regret it. Hell, I don't even regret it now.
yeah.
What will be, will be. But I just felt like, as an athlete, quite disrespected from the industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, like, I've never been a feminist and I've never been like that. But you start to second guess things. You're like, hang on a second. If this was the male world record holder, Would the same, would it, would it be the same?
Right.
Would it be the same? Or is this just an easy way to get me off the books kind of thing? I don't know. So they didn't say they terminated it as such. They just never renewed it. So I sat out the next 3 weeks. And I love it that they did it when I was in 2 weeks hotel quarantine by myself.
Yeah.
It was a great 2 weeks. But at the end of the day, I thoroughly respect them and thoroughly appreciate the support that I had for 8 years. Um, but
But you
I'm
don't feel that you want to put a show for them.
no, I will no, yes, and I don't feel like I want to see those people who made that phone call who didn't even say congratulations.
Yeah.
The first phone call was asking me to explain myself. And do I regret it? I made history in our sport. I am the greatest female jumper there has ever been. I haven't lost in 9 years. And I've been chasing 200 foot behind everybody possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not a slalomer. I can't throw the handle. I can't stop midair. And yes, I made that decision to take that jump knowing that I could do it, but it's never a guarantee. So yeah, at the end of the day, US Masters is probably a no for me for a whole combination of reasons. Um, I'm at that point in my life that yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to, I'm probably ready to let others take over. I
Mm-hmm.
don't, I can't guarantee that anybody will see me overseas again. I
Yeah.
can half guarantee I'll be at Moomba next year,
Okay.
but I can't guarantee that anybody on the worldwide stage will see me outside of Australia.
Yeah.
Like it's hard, it's still hard. Like leaving the country is easy now, but it's so expensive.
It
So
is.
like even if I came to Masters, I'd probably lose money.
But what about, so look, I who am I to ask you difficult questions? But we've been here for almost 2 hours, so I'm gonna take another poke at it. What if, and I'm not talking about Masters, I'm talking about another event. I don't know what it is. But the what if your presence helped the sport of women's jumping? And I'm talking specifically about, like maybe a new event comes up, or there's something, I don't know, like some, you see what I mean? Like I fully understand what you're feeling, because I would probably, I'm pretty rebellious despite I don't come across as such, so I would have probably done the same thing, or at least the line of thought would have been the same. But my impression has always been that you had on your shoulders willingly not only this trying to break and create new things in women's jumping, but also to show, hey, there's a group of girls here that can go very far, and
Yeah.
they should get good drivers, they should get good conditions, they should get possibility to perform. What if that was the motive?
And I think that has been part of the motive for a long time. Like I was severely, once again, I'm being brutally honest because hey, I might not have to face these people in the future. um, I was really disappointed in some of the women's jumpers last year. Really disappointed. Like Malibu Open had fabulous money for an 8 hour drive from Florida. Not even 6, I don't know what it was. And half of the field didn't come. Half of the top 10 girls in the world who were training 5 hours away didn't get in their car and come because I was so focused on worlds. And it's like, are you not a good enough skier that you can go and jump behind a Malibu for 6 jumps? 6 jumps, that's all it is. And then
Yeah.
get in your car and go back to a perfect lake at Jack Travers with a perfect boat and still jump okay? Like, do you not have confidence in your own ability? Why are you not supporting these events? And the same thing at Mastercraft Pro. We had girls that live 40 minutes away, 45 minutes, and they didn't rock up. Like, it's a slap in the face to organisers. And I felt so sorry for Malibu Open, you know. And at the moment, Malibu Open this year for women's jump has a to be determined next to it. It's got no prize money right now. it's got no guarantee that it's going to go ahead.
Yeah.
And, if they turn around and go, girls, you didn't support the event, you know, come and support us and then we'll put it on, like, fair call. Because you had nearly all of the top jumpers in the world already in America training. And
Yeah.
we had three enter Malibu Open. So I was severely disappointed.
But
You know, that,
and I want to talk
so
to you about this because I had the same experience from an organizer perspective. As you know, I
yeah,
organized a pro event. The first 3 years, well, sorry, second year, we had an 8 people head-to-head final, right? And by the third year, we had what the money was for being a pro event, and we had 25 men fighting for those 8 spots and 8 women fighting for those 8 spots. Now, there was a difference in cash price at the time. It
yeah,
wasn't that much, but certainly not enough to justify, you know, like basically the money was 12 for men and 9K for women. So if it was 25 men, it should have been, I don't know, 15 women, 13 women,
yeah,
16, whatever. It was 8, And I
yeah.
remember having to basically do that type of email to the top 30 women in the world of like, hey, if you don't come, what am I
Where's
doing
the
this for,
support?
And
It's a,
and I
I
see
think
that
it's,
like I've seen it over the years. Like I don't know. I do the tournament. There's 2 weeks later. There's like I don't know a European Championship. So the guys will come. They don't care. But the women, nah, no, I gotta train for Europeans.
yeah.
What is this about?
So there's so many factors that play into it. And I think Girls that Fly, I actually missed it because I was at work, had a Zoom the other day, meeting of the girls to determine this. And Britt Greenwood's doing a lot of work in this area. Like she went to Malibu Open, she went to Master Pro, she rocked up at every event, and she's been trying her hardest to kind of bring up these girls and go, well, why aren't you attending? Why
Yeah,
aren't you, Brett, trying to open up that door and have a go at pro events or support the events when you're going well? And I think there's a multitude of things like obviously the prize money definitely comes into it, especially for, people like myself who it's time off work, so it's a double whammy. You're losing money while trying to gain money. You've got to pay for massive airfares coming from Australia. But I think I've barely, apart from COVID, I think I barely missed an event my whole life flying in and out of Australia. I always made the effort because things like Moomba and Masters, you want that experience of winning. And I've heard some comments from the girls that I don't think they get that. They don't understand that they want to win Moomba to win Moomba. Like they don't hold that prestige for it. So there's cost. Um, Obviously, for some people, the timing of events, like as a European skier, they might get paid off their federation. Canada gets money depending on how well they do at Worlds, and some of the other countries, Belarus and so forth. So I understand if they're maybe putting more pressure on Worlds to ski better there because they're getting funding, right? But it's a double-edged sword because if the money's not there, they're not going to attend. But if girls don't attend, then they're not going to get money. They're not going to get that exposure. So it's like which one has to take the hit, right? Does the athlete have to take the hit and make a loss and be dirt beat poor, right? For the sponsors to go, they're rocking up, we're going to throw the money. Or is it the sponsors and the organisers that need to take the hit to convince the girls to come so then it can start? And it's like, well, which one takes the hit?
I
And then
think it's
second to
both.
that,
I
yeah,
think it's
and it's
both.
both, and it's hard, right? And
Like
then the
so. I sorry to interrupt you, but what I
no, go
did
for it.
after that email that I told you is that I said I'm gonna put the money up again. And
Yeah,
honestly, my approach was, I don't care. So I do a slalom event, and I
yeah,
said I don't care if the women's event is one with 1 at 41 or 2 at 38. I honestly
as
don't
long as
care.
there's
I'm
come.
putting up this money if you want to come. And same situation, like plenty of great slalom skiers living 3 5 hours away or like a low
Yeah,
cost flight away
yeah,
in Europe, not showing up. I'm like, well, then the 17-year-old who's decided to come and running some buoys, she's gonna go home with a check. So
exactly.
I think it's
The
both.
Yeah, and once again, this is like hey, we've been chatting since 5 a.m. this morning. I'm going to be brutally honest here. Our sport is a white elitist sport.
Hmm.
For God's sakes, you have to have $175,000 boat these days to do it, right? So if you can afford to be a water skier, then at the moment, I feel right. This is going to be quite out there. I feel like a lot of the people that do the sport already have money behind them. They already have the parents that are supporting them. They already live on a lake. They can go and they don't have jobs. They just can take, credit cards off their parents or get money off their federation. So the effort for them to fly overseas, you know, and win a couple of grand where that couple of grand doesn't really mean anything to them because they have an, a huge amount of money behind them is a lot different to say when I came on the tour and we had some girls. I remember being in China and I was like, oh my God, I have to podium to afford to fly home. I can't afford my return trip unless I podium. Like, I could have been stuck in China if I didn't ski well, type thing.
Yeah.
But I don't think we have that anymore because the sport and the boats are so expensive and it's such an expensive sport to do that if you're already doing it, you probably have money behind you. So therefore, they're not willing to chase for $1,000 here, $2,000 there, $3,000 here, right? They're not
Hmm.
willing to make those sacrifices for the benefit of that tournament because they don't need that money. Does
Yeah.
that, I know that's a left field thought, but it's what I've seen in the last 2, 3, 4 years in particular. Whereas, we used to go to events and all of us girls, I remember sharing a double bed with Natty and Alex Laurentano in China. And then our transport to the airport was the back of a truck. Like, that's what we would do to save money,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whereas, like, now everyone's staying at the massive resort at Masters, which costs $1,000 a night for a bed. I
How?
can't stay
Yeah,
at that. I stay at the $60 motel that's got mold in it down the road. Like, so
yeah,
I
yeah.
just think it's the way our sport's going because of the industry. Because to be into it, you need 150, 170, well, in Australia, it's $175,000 for a boat,
That's nuts. That's
which is
absolutely
nuts.
nuts. Yeah, and I think
So
maybe
I,
I don't know, but I want to stay to this because I obviously agree 100%. But I also think it might be peculiar to the US, right? I mean, I don't know the Australian water ski scene very well, but it sounds a little bit more like the European one. So there's clubs, fewer boats, very much used boats. You try to ski, like people conglomerate where there is a boat and they train essentially. So I think maybe in our world the situation is kind of similar. Like if there's a $60 a night motel that you can share with a buddy, like you're gonna share.
yeah,
Um,
you're tenting it at the event or
you know,
in a swag. You're not
yeah,
in a motel.
yeah, exactly. So no, I mean that's a very very interesting thought because I obviously I don't know. I feel it like a bit of a life call to promote this sport and the huge increase in prices of the things we need to do the sport is worrisome.
Yeah.
It's really
And
worrisome.
also, like, I know going back to your earlier question, you're like, do you want to do it for other reasons in terms of promotion and so forth? And yeah, like 100% like going to Moomba and skiing at Moomba. And, I was not going to go to the Hall of Fame this year because I was like, well, no, night jump, men's is the same night. And without Moomba being on, the Hall of Fame can't run. So I'm going to ski it in men's to bump up the field and that type of stuff. But in terms of my status and my ability of jumping far being good for women's jump, it's I see it has both sides. Like I see it's good that girls now can pursue 200 and can go, well, I want to be second. Like she can do it, why can't I do it? Type thing, and have the ability that that barrier is not there anymore. That we can jump bigger. Like 180 is not big for women's jump.
Yeah.
190, yeah, let's go for that instead. Let's not just try and make the 180 club. Let's try and join Jacinta and Natty at the 190 club type thing. Um, but on a flip side to that, I know in the past there's been girls that have said and written emails even, why would I come to Moomba for second place and earn 3 grand? Now they've lost it already in their head. If they're assuming that I'm going to win and they're going to get second, and they're basing their their whole decision on going to events of whether or not I'm going to be there, is terrible.
Yeah.
Is terrible. And that makes me feel shitty that I'm bringing down our sport like that. That girls aren't going because I'm at an event, and that makes me feel terrible that that's their level of motivation, that they're just assuming they're going to get seconds, or why come for that level of money. So I think the dominance that I've had has been positive in some respect, but definitely it does have a flip side.
Yeah.
It does have a flip side. Like, is it really still exciting to see me go out and jump? Or is it more exciting to see two girls battle it out with a 10 centimeter difference and somebody has to win it on their last jump? They win by 10 centimeters. Is that more exciting? Or is seeing somebody go much further, trying to chase a record, more exciting? So I think there's a flip side to it, and there is definitely aspects of the dominance I've had that hasn't been positive on women's jumping.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very introspective and deep what you just said. I'm glad you
Don't get me
shared it
wrong,
because,
I'm not gonna regret it and I'm not gonna change it, but I definitely think there's aspects of the progression of women's jump and the static hold we're in currently. Like we're seeing women progress and numbers progress, and we're seeing men's, um, but three girls at Malibu Open,
yeah, that's
and only I think six, just maybe five at Mastercraft Pro, when they're two very accessible events with decent money. Like that's not
yeah,
good, and we
yeah,
need to change it.
yeah. Look, maybe I let's stay on the excitement, but on a more personal level.
Yeah,
Let's just say, and I'm sure it's few, but let's just say someone listening to this podcast now have never seen you jump, right?
yeah.
Describe your style and describe your feelings when you jump.
And that's funny. The first thing that comes to mind is a comment by Freddie Krueger, who was commentating Malibu Open in 2019.
Okay.
And the comment, like Curtis recorded it and sent it to me straight away. And Freddie said, she has a very, very unorthodox technique. And if she wasn't as strong as she was, I don't know how she goes that far. And that really kind of, I guess, summarizes my technique in a sense that if I weren't as strong as what I am, I probably couldn't get away with what I do. So I think I can jump when, and Kylie said it as well, like when we were training before Worlds, he tried to calm me down a bit and he tried to get me a lot lighter on my skis at the back of the turn and not pushing as heavy. And I could do it and I could look technically beautiful, but I'd go 190 max every jump, but it wasn't 200. So I think there's a definite difference in my technique based on the distance I was trying to go. I'm not trying to go 190 and look perfect and smooth. I'm trying to go 200. So I have to be strong in the gym. I have to be able to tolerate those loads. I have to be ballsy and be willing to risk going close to the corner to generate the maximum angle up the jump ramp. So my technique is, I guess, like I would say through the wakes, jump, land on one ski, like to think I'm similar to, say, a Freddy Krueger rather than a Ryan Dodd.
Yeah.
Um, but then in my turn, I'm I'm probably a mix between trying to be like a male at 57, but needing to be more like a collegiate, 51K 5 foot boy skier, where I have to turn and get my skis around and I have to kind of push and go. So it's about that fine point of when I push and go. So this season was all about just getting that little bit more delay at the back of the turn, letting my skis finish with speed, kind of sucking my knee up towards me before I was locked and loaded and ready to go. And I do get opened up a little bit through the wakes because I push so early. And hence why my strength training then has to come back in to allow me to get back down and go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, yeah, definitely unorthodox and different,
Yep.
but it has to be. Because if I
Yeah.
want to just jump technically nice like everybody else, I'll go between 180 and 190, and like it won't get me to that next stage, I don't think.
Well, I mean, clearly, the fact that you went to 100 doing this, you were probably right.
Yeah.
But then let's go to that second part of the, like, I'm curious to hear, because as you know, I've been waiting 2 hours to ask you this question, and you probably know which question it is. But what are your favorite parts? What are still after all these years? What do you enjoy about it? Like, and I'm talking in the moment. Like, is it, man, I'm gonna make it on the ramp, or that sort of like second half in the air? Like, what is it like emotionally?
Um,
Very
the
viscerally. What do you
second, the
like about it?
second, the second lift, like I talk about it, I describe it for myself as the second lift. When like you're getting pulled off the ramp, and then usually you just stop and float, and then you kind of get that little ooh, again,
Right,
that little
right,
bit of whoa, I'm going back up. That's an incredible feeling, and that feeling, like that exhilarating feeling, that adrenaline rush, flying through the air with that second pull, and the boat's just continuing to pull you. You can't beat that. That's incredible. And like that's what I strive for now. Like I haven't gone and sat down and set another goal. I haven't gone, I want to go 205. I haven't gone, I want to go 210. I haven't gone, oh, I want to, do this event. I've gone, I just want to have fun and chase that feeling. And I got it a few times before Moomba, definitely. I had some ripper jumps, like massive jumps. And I got it again at Moomba. And like it's that feeling. Like I love the feeling at the back of the turn, knowing I've done it right. And it could just be open cutting because I open cut a lot more than I go over, a lot more. And even in an open cut, if I get that feeling and then I get my skis around and I'm gliding with no load and I'm moving fast and then the boat hits me and slingshots me, like that feeling is like, yes, like I've done it. Like I get really
right.
pumped. So, and yeah, I can, remember that feeling from a specific open cut I did 2.5 years ago where that was the turning point where Curtis is like, replicate that every day for the next 2 years and you're going 200. Like, you've got it type thing. So yeah, that feeling, and it's so hard to, and I guess you'd have it the same for slalom, that gate turn in that just sets up the pass, that no matter what else you do in the pass, you've had that right gate turn in and you're going to run it, and feelings like that. But that feeling of that second lift and that second load in the air, like you can't beat that.
No.
And as long as I still get that feeling, I'll still jump.
Yeah,
As long as I'm still getting that feeling, I will still jump.
yeah,
The
yeah,
minute I
yeah.
lose that feeling, I'll hang up the skis.
Okay, okay. No, I perfectly understand, and I agree. I mean, the feeling of lift. Listen, I jump a little bit. I've never gotten a second lift in my entire life, so the first one was already enough for me to go back on the
Yeah,
skis. So I can't even
yeah,
imagine the second one.
yeah,
That has got to be peculiar just to jump. But in terms of like a good, well executed technical movement with the skis on the water or the ski,
yeah,
I get that. I get that.
yeah,
But the lift
yeah.
is just its own
And
thing.
just chasing that feeling of my body's in sync.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. So,
So the question I have is a comment I put on your Instagram, and I've been wanting to ask you for so long. So the prelims at Worlds last year, there was Ricky, I think it was Ricky from the TWBC crew, who had a camera right around where you were turning.
yeah, yeah,
And his angle was perfectly aligned of camera, you, ramp.
yeah,
And you turn, you're going for it, and it's so clear from that angle. There's no chance in hell the skis are gonna be on the ramp, like zero.
yeah, yeah.
And yet you clear the wakes, and then you hold the handle for like a split of a second. So, and then obviously you pass because really like there was no chance that the skis were going over. What went through your head in that cut? Because like when I watched, I got scared watching it. Because I mean, I watched you jump. I know what you can do, but I can also trust my eyes that the skis were just pointing for the side curtain. Like, what was going
Um,
on?
so I always, and if people look back at the track record of me first round events, it's probably quite clear that a lot of the time I'll pass my third jump. Not because I've already qualified, but because I'm training for the second round, right? So once I'm qualified, my focus goes off today's performance, unless I'm like close to going 200, and all about tomorrow's performance. What do I need to change today to be better in finals? So for me, I'll try and go probably too late on the third. Because if I've been a little bit early, or even hitting middle or right of middle, I want to know what that vision looks like in my turn and be stressed and nervous and oh my God, I got to turn, but try and do it calm because I know I'm passing and see where my skis get to. Because obviously, when you're late and you panic, of course, you're going to stay late. But if you're late and don't panic and get a good rhythm and get a good turn, sometimes you can make it. And that's when you get the amazing big jumps, right? So I'm like, okay, let's bring it down off the 6, a meter, half a meter, whatever might have been. And as I'm gliding, just thinking, oh yeah, I'm late, but I know I'm passing. Stay calm, see where the skis get to, and then I know for tomorrow where I start my first jump. I only have to back it up half a foot, which it's a lot easier to go out and start the set by backing it up half a foot than it is
Yeah.
going, I was too early yesterday, I need to bring it down 2 foot.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about pushing the limits and going, how late is too late? And obviously, like exactly like you said, I would have dislocated my hip. Like my right ski wouldn't have got on the ramp. Definitely contemplated taking it though, but that's just me and my crazy ways in that moment. And you would have seen it plenty of times in the past where I've taken jumps I probably shouldn't. But yeah, it's more so about pushing that barriers to find that timing for the next day so I can push the limits when it's needed.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. I just found it extremely telling. I'm like, if I had to show to someone who is Jacinta Carroll, I would have shown that. Not even your
Yeah,
200, just that of like, see, like she thought about maybe she could have made it.
yeah.
Uh,
And like the 200 jump was 100% the same thing. I was either hitting the corner and crashing or going 200.
yeah.
But I was willing to take that gamble for the result. And after that, I reckon within the first 10 minutes, one of my things that came out of my mouth was, I now never have to hit the corner again. I
Ah,
never have to push that barrier and risk injury again because it's done,
mm-hmm,
you know?
mm-hmm.
So I think I have to have been pushing those barriers to see where the limit was. And don't get me wrong, there's probably plenty of coaches sitting here right now going, that's wrong. You can hit middle and still get the same direction, or you can hit right or middle. You don't need to be on the corner. And that's fine. That's fine. Jumpers can jump like that. Go for it. But for me, that's always been my thing. I've always been on the edge of the corner, but I now never have to hit that corner again. I can say goodbye to it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ron Goodman will be happy because he has to send me a lot of fins usually.
Got it, got it. Listen, so one other question. I don't know. Do you have time for another like 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah, 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 that's fine. As long as I'm off by like 8 a.m. to get to work.
Okay, okay, which is in 20 minutes. Okay, look, just my background is sports psychology, and
Yes.
I interviewed a couple of jumpers like before you, and I sort of defended that jumping is the most psychological of the three events, and for a number of reasons. Like the movements are way less in jumping than in trick skiing, certainly, or in slalom skiing. There's an aspect of fear. There's an aspect of, it's an extreme sport in the sense that the more you're willing to risk, all things considered, the more you're willing to risk, the better you can perform.
Yeah.
All these things. So I've already had a chance to talk about it with other guests, but part of what I find myself working with jumpers on a sports psychology side of things
Yeah.
is that pass where you're not jumping. So the boat turns around, you're just going on the other end of the lake to get ready for your next jump.
Yeah.
Like, what is that for you? Like, have you ever struggled with overthinking, or like, is it something that has been, somewhat in your awareness, like as you improved in jumping?
Yeah, I think more times than not, I'm an overthinker. Um, so more times than not, I'll be analyzing, all right, my keys, like where were my skis at the start of the turn? Were they shoulder width? Were they too narrow? Most of the time for me, I accidentally snowplow, they get too narrow and they slow me down. So I'll be analyzing where my skis were in the turn. I'll be analyzing like my handle movement. Was it across my body? Was it more out to the side? Was it back? So I tend to probably overthink a little bit. Um, and then the other one is sometimes like obviously you talk like you know psychologists will talk about the state of readiness like are you under ready, over ready type thing, I would usually probably get myself over. Like I would get, come on, you can do this. Like there's been plenty of videos of me hitting myself in my head or punching my leg. Like, yes, you've got this, you've got this. But sometimes that really helps. And then other times it gets me too wired up that then I turn too hard type thing. So for me, I don't know whether it's from the coaches I've had, like that bit of negative background in terms of pulling it apart. So I'll pull the jump apart, piece it back together, decide what I need to change, and then go again. Because the minute I feel like I try and think about something else, oh, let's relax, and so think about the crowd or this, like you've clocked off from the jump set. I really feel like I have to stay in the moment, and if I stay thinking about my cues and my keys and what I can change for the next one, I'm better in the moment. Rather than if I clock off and try to forget about it, then your mind's going elsewhere, and then you're not in the zone to jump.
Yeah, yeah. So that free pass in your approach is still a ski set.
It's still working.
It's still working. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I can see
yeah.
that.
And like for some, they might need to clock off because they might overanalyze the bad aspects too much, right? But yes, we have great muscle memory. But if the muscle memory produced a 100-foot jump and you want to make it a 110-foot jump, you can't just clock off and go and do muscle memory and do the same thing, because then you're going to go 100-foot. So like, obviously there's that aspect of being able to really zone in. And when I'm skiing really well and I get angry at myself when I can't get this feeling, I can feel everything. I can feel the water under my feet. I can feel how quick my skis are moving. I can feel where my elbow is, where my handle is, where my shoulder is. I can feel everything. But when I'm jumping bad, I'm like, I can't feel it. Curtis is like, what do you mean? It's like, I can't feel my body. My body is disconnected from my skis. Like, I can't feel it. So for me, I'm very mentally in check with where my body is in space. So I try and keep it like that when I'm driving back down the lake to go for my next jump.
Yeah.
I may even do a couple of practice turns, like close my eyes and feel it out as well.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense, because there are other sports where, like classic examples are like tennis or golf, where actually the vast majority of the time you're not performing, right? Whereas jumping has this little cool thing of like half of the moment that you're performing for X time, you're not performing for X time times 3. So it's curious what happens in those free passes.
Yeah.
Look, Rabbit, I have so many questions I want to ask you. So provided you promise me you would be able to do this again in sometime in the future, I think we should stop.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Obviously, it took us a while to find a time this time around, but that's fine. And like, obviously, like I said earlier, like I've been, like, especially with some of the feelings I had after the world record of, I felt like the moment was taken from me, and I wasn't able to enjoy it as much because of everything that happened subsequently. Like, obviously, I've been pretty honest and open about that. But like I said, it's no discredit to anybody. It's just, that's what sport is. I obviously wish it happened differently, and wish everybody the best. But yeah, it'll take me a while to get over that one. So hopefully people don't take it the wrong way when they listen to me being a bit brutally honest with it.
Look, I'm humbled that you decided to share and reason through this here with me. But honestly, like, I want to get you back for other questions about you, and like I just have another 15 or 20. So I'm sure, maybe sometime down the line, if you have time, I would love to do this again with you.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Look, I always give a little bit of time for some gratitude. So it's time for you to give your shout outs.
Well, I guess, like, first and foremost, like, I'm assuming everybody would say this first, would be your family. Like, it is such a family driven sport. So, without them and getting into the sport, you can't do what you need to do. And it's not just my family, like the Bryants took me in when I used to live overseas, and Susie and Wayne were always looking after me and taking me to events and feeding me, And then families like the Eads, Kyle and Karen, like I don't stay in a ski school house, I stay at their house and I'm part of their family. Like, there's been so many families over the years. So I think everybody always will pay gratitude to them because my family have been amazing. And then, my ski families over the years have always supported me. Obviously, all of my sponsors, past and present, like I
Yeah.
said, like Nautique were great. They supported me for eight years. Ron Goodman, he never wanted to tread on Ray's toes, but he came out of nowhere and said, I will make your skis. I will try and make them replicas of Stokes. You don't even need to put Goodman stickers on them, you know,
Yeah.
but I want to help you out because I know you don't have him anymore. Like that kind of network and support that we have in skiing is amazing. So huge shout out to him because he's been great. And then obviously Stokes themselves have continued to support me. And then along the way, I've had heaps and heaps and heaps of other sponsors, and they all know who they are, and I really respect them for that. But yeah, I just like thankful for organizers and people like yourself who are continuing to push the boundaries of our sport and trying to build it up and doing things like this and having podcasts and hopefully for a little jumper who might listen to this and might go, I want to break her record. Go for it. Like
Yeah.
go for it. Records are meant to be broken, and yeah. So thank you to yourself and the Water Ski Broadcasting Company that are doing all the great things that they're doing at the moment as well, and the Pro Ski Tour that are trying to get more events, and now Jarrett with his overall tour. So just thankful for everybody in our community who wants to put skiing first and is trying to make it a better future for the athletes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, I thank you for having spent your super early morning with me. This was a lot of fun. I've learned a lot. I'm very very happy that we got to do it. So thank you, Jacinta Carroll, for being on the Water Ski podcast.
No worries. Chat to you soon.